Mr. Pond Boss, tell me what to do to make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
Hello everybody, Bob Lusk, the Pond Boss, coming at you live on this Tuesday night for an hour or so, whatever you want to do. And we're going to talk about ponds and lakes and fish and stuff like that. So join in and let's hang out and carry on a little conversation. I know that you'll have some questions, so pitch those at me whenever you get time. I see we have one viewer. It's a good start. I'm always trying to think about topics to talk about on this show. And, sometimes that escapes me, sometimes it doesn't. And I started thinking about it at 6:26 today. So I thought about talking about the different myths and misconceptions about ponds. So one of the things I've learned over a long career, I just started my 46th year as a private sector fisheries biologist. I don't even remember being 46 years old, but here we are. Hello, John Dyer. John got it. He got it. I'm glad you reminded me, John. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine. Click like. Share this video to your timeline, and you're eligible for a drawing for a Pond Boss hat, which we'll do that before long. John's already got one. So anyway, I thought I'd talk about some of the myths and misconceptions because there's some things that I've seen over the years. Hello, John Funk. I kind of hope you'd be there. Hey, Bill Schrum, good to see you. I got your email. I haven't had a chance to sit down. I went and looked at Debbie and I took yesterday off to enjoy the inauguration ceremonies and all the pomp that goes with that. And we had a blast. I don't ever just take a day off and do nothing. Well, I did yesterday. And then today I got to go look at a lake site over on the west side of Fort Worth, about 45 minutes from my house. And yeah, John, it gets kind of cold here. It got down, I think, at 18 degrees this morning, which is a little cooler than what's normal for us, but it's not anything like what you guys go through, so we're not going to complain about it. We have a warm house and a good view. So, and we didn't get any of the snow. All the snow is south and east of us, actually. But anyway, I went and looked at it's called Blue Jack Project, and they're building a golf course community out on the west side of Fort Worth, and inside that golf course community is going to be a 9-acre lake. And those guys found out about me through one of their co-conspirators. That's a popular word. And anyway, they were looking for some help on designing a lake. So I went over there today and looked at it, and what they're basically doing is they're building a reservoir where they can store water to irrigate the golf course. That's the deal. But since it's going to be an amenity for the people that live there, they think that 60 to 70% of the people that buy lots and build houses will be a permanent residence. The rest will be a second or third home. And homes are going to be pretty expensive. They're going to start at like $1.2 million up to $5 or $6 million. So it looks like a pretty high-end thing. And this reservoir that they're digging, and they need the material, so there's a lot of limestone, so they're breaking through limestone. It's pretty soft limestone because they're ripping it with rippers on the back of a dozer. Then they're loading it onto dump trucks and moving it over to places where they can pulverize it and then use it for something. Hello, Jason Dodd, -4. I bet the fish are frozen. Probably not -4 at the bottom of your pond. Yep, Bill Schrum, it was a great ceremony. We enjoyed it all day long, just get to see all of it and just had a great time. But anyway, as I got to looking at this lake site, and they've got all kinds of heavy equipment, these guys have never built a fishing lake before, so it was really fun to be in a side-by-side for about an hour and a half today, talking to them, brainstorming with them, letting them think about some different things they could do because, with a crowd like that, some of them are going to be fly fishermen, so why not create some areas around the lake that can be fly fishing areas, that we can attract fish up, like big bluegills where people can catch them on a popping bug on a 5-weight rod, So we had a really good conversation. Those guys were pretty excited. One of them was Mark Brooks, who, all you golfers, you guys will know who Mark Brooks is. He's been around the PGA forever. As a matter of fact, he and I went to the same high school together. He's 6 years younger than me. He graduated in 79. I graduated in 73. So we got to talk. His mother was the drama teacher when I was there, and actually when he was there too. And so anyway, it was a great visit. We got to brainstorm. I gave them a couple of ideas. One of them they really liked was, hey, why not take this 9.5 acre lake, and let's create maybe 6 different zones in that lake with specific habitat to attract certain kinds of fish, like bigger bluegills or intermediate sized bass or whatever, and then fix it to where when kids are fishing, that we can treat it like a game. They can start with zone 1 that's got a name, and then zone, fish there for 20 or 30 minutes, and go to zone 2 and then zone 3, and have their own little tournament where the kids are going from one zone to the next to the next to the next, and just they liked that idea. They thought that was pretty cool. So we're going to brainstorm that, see what we can do. So I thought today, until you guys start throwing some questions out here, I wrote down a little list, some myths and misconceptions. The number one myth, in my opinion, nobody knows how big their ponds are. A couple of years ago, I had a guy from Oklahoma City call me, and he'd bought a place out east of Oklahoma City, about 25 or 30 miles, and had built a pond on it. Now, when he called me, he said, okay, this pond is not quite full, but it's not far from it, and it's about 6 acres. So I said, okay, I got to run up that way and go over east of you and look at a site there, and let me just pop in and I'll take a look at it with you. So I showed up at the designated time, and we climbed in his pickup, started driving around. He pulled up on this little half-acre pond, and I remember him telling me about a smaller pond on the property. And so we pulled up to this pond that's I actually measured it and it was 3/4 of an acre. He said, okay, here it is. I said, here it is what? He said, this is my 5-acre lake. I said, dude, what makes you think this is 5 acres? He said, well, that's what the bulldozer guy said to me. And he's a developer. I would think he'd have a pretty good perspective on size. He didn't. And I said, man, this thing is between 1/2 and 3/4 of an acre. He says, are you serious? I said, yeah. I mean, if we'd have done this over the phone and you told me it was 5 acres, I would have had you spend way more money than you needed, and not only do you a disservice with that, it would do you a disservice when you stuck 5 times as many fish into a body of water and you had a fish kill in about 2 years. So one of the big myths and misconceptions are there's not very many people that actually know how big their ponds are. So go to Google Earth and measure it. I've got Google Earth Pro, but I think even on regular Google Earth, you guys can go on there and actually measure your pond, so Just like, for example, if you decide next summer next spring you want to fertilize it, you got to know how big it is. You can get out there and figure out average depth as well. So that's part of the fun of having a pond, is trying to figure that out. Another myth and misconception is how fish live and how big they are. I had a guy not long ago, we stocked some bass in a brand new pond about 2 years ago, and he texted me all excited. He says, man, we caught a 7-pound bass. Well, as a fisheries biologist, I know that's absolutely not possible. So the first thought that goes through my mind is he doesn't know how big it is. He's making that number up, or he had some fish get in there that he didn't know about, and they've decimated the bluegill and fathead minnow population. So when I texted back, I said, do you have a picture? And sure enough, he sent me a picture of about a 3.5-pound bass. So most of the time, people's fish sizes are not what they think. Another myth is population structure. And what I mean by that is a lot of times people think they have something in terms of how many different sizes of bluegill and how many bluegill there may be, compared to how many bass or compared to how many catfish or whatever, and they really, really, really don't know. And it's because their conclusions are drawn by assumptions. And when you're really trying to analyze a fishery or diagnose something that's going on, you need facts. And that way you can make really, really good decisions. John Funk, new idea for the South, ice fishing. What's that? Only ice we ever see is in tea. John Harson, Florida's getting 6 to 9 inches of snow. Boy, they don't know what to do about that. Negatives of shooting clay pigeons or guns over your pond with the remnants falling on there. Nothing wrong with that at all. Nothing. As a matter of fact, hello, Kenny Sanderson. As a matter of fact, Jason, probably 15 years ago, I went to Purina Mills with an idea, and I said, hey, why can't you guys come out with a product that is sporting clays, and you make the clays out of fish food? Man, they thought it was a great idea. They didn't have the equipment, and they didn't want to do the market research to see if it had any value. But I was sure thinking, man, if they had some sporting clays that were made out of fish food and compressed in there really tight, and you shoot those over the pond. So here's the bottom line. The negatives of shooting clay pigeons or guns over your pond, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing. I mean, you're shooting steel shot now. You know, that steel's not going to hurt the water. The clay pigeons are inert. They're probably not going to dissolve because they're baked hard, you know, and crisp, or they'll break. So I don't know anything wrong at all. John measured his with Onyx. Yep, you can use Onyx as well. I used to subscribe to that, but I don't. I use Google Earth all the time. I'm on there all the time. Tom Davis is ice fishing. I bet you are. Mike Cottrell from Palapena, Chris Blood. Ponds turn into lakes are twice as big if you're the guy selling the property. Absolutely right. Jim Allen from Florida. Dude, you had to go from Kentucky to Florida to get snowed on. Distance and area apps works well to measure. I don't know about that one. So, you know, I'm sure there's a lot. Here's the moral of the story. Don't assume how big your pond is. Go measure it. You know, another big assumption is it's not. This will happen 3 or 4 times a year. I'll get a call from somebody that says, hey, I want to buy some fish. Well, I don't ever just say, okay, sure, how many you want, and let's go. So I always ask some questions like, what do you want to do? Tell me about your pond. Well, my pond's 4 years old, and there's no fish in it, so I need to stock it. Well, how do you know there's no fish in it? Well, I never see them. Well, did you stock it? Yes, we stocked it about 2.5 years ago. After it took about 1.5 years to fill up with water, and then we stocked it. And you haven't seen any fish for 1.5 years or 2 years. No. Have you fed them? No. Have you gone fishing? Well, no, we just don't see any fish. You can't judge by that. And I tell you, the way my brain thinks, it's many of you guys know this, but back in 2005, our house burned down. And when Debbie called me and the house was on fire, I hustled home, went in the house, and I could hear crackling way up in the ceiling, up in the great room. And my thoughts were, you know what, the fire department's going to be here in a minute. They'll get this put out. We're going to be sleeping here. That was wrong thinking. I should have thought the house is going to burn down. I may have 20 minutes to get stuff out that has value to her. I should have done that, and I didn't. Jennifer Young. Oh my gosh, I'll tell Debbie hello. Great to see you, dear. Glad you're checking in. That's cool. Appreciate it. We love you. Miss you guys. So anyway, when there's a pond there that's been on your property for more than 1 year to 1.5 years and you haven't put fish in it, odds are high there are fish in it. You know, there's a lot of debate on how those fish get there, and I could argue that point either way. I don't particularly believe that they come in from birds. You know, it escapes me to think that a group of eggs can be stuck to a heron's leg. The heron flies through the air, the eggs don't dry out, then the bird lands in a place where the eggs can actually hatch and then grow up and then reproduce. That's pretty far-fetched to me. Most of the time where I see fish in a pond, they swam upstream from another pond downstream. Almost every time. I can't tell you how many times in my 20s and 30s, right after a rain, I would be on a piece of property somewhere, and I would take the time in my mud boots to walk through the pastures to see how water was flowing from one pond to the next, even if the upper pond was on somebody else's property. Almost every single time, I'd find some evidence of fish swimming, especially if it was in April or May of the year after a spawn. You know, because the little bitty fish, they're in shallow water and they're going to seek that moving water. And so fish get in there. So instead of assuming there's fish aren't there, the moral of the story about the house burning down, assume that fish are there. Well, I remember one, good gosh, this was probably 2003. I had a guy call me down around Austin, had bought a piece of property, and he was thinking about building a couple of ponds. So I went and looked, and his question to me is, can I build one bigger lake, or should I build 2 ponds? Well, I looked at the elevations. He really needed to build 2 ponds. So he said, well, I'll get to it. When I get to it, I'll call you. Well, I hear from him 6 years later. He calls me, and he says, hey, I'm ready to stock these 2 ponds. I said, what'd you end up doing? So he told me what he did. And I looked on Google Earth, and sure enough, there they were. The maps were updated, and this was outside of Bastrop, Texas. But then I looked real close, and I thought, you know what? Something's going on here, because there was a pond across the highway. There's a culvert leading from the pond across the highway into his pond, and one pond is immediately above the other one. Then I zoomed in, and I saw a Texas hunter feeder, Chris Blood, on the dock of that pond across the highway. So I thought, you know what, that guy's managing his fishery. So the odds are pretty high that this guy's got some fish. So we need to find that out. So when I called him back, I said, you know what, I don't want to bring you $6,000 worth of fish. I think it makes sense that we go electrofish it, take a look and see what you got. If you have fish, he said, well, I've not put any fish in it. There's not any fish in it. So hooked up the electrofishing boat, hoofed it down there, unloaded the boat, and as I unloaded the boat, I got to looking, there were little bitty bass everywhere. We started shocking that lake. Both lakes had the population of fish as though they'd been properly stocked 4 years before, or 5 years before. So he had a ready-made fishery, and all those fish came from that pond that's upstream, that came over and came down the spillway for that guy with the perfect timing of rains. And so he didn't need to buy any fish at all. So he paid $1,500 for an electrofishing survey to tell him he didn't need to spend $6,000 on fish. So that's kind of the moral of the story. All right, so I'm going to swing back up here. John Funk, I really laugh at 8 inches of snow in New Orleans. Yeah, they got a snow day. They're actually cross-country skiing down Bourbon Street today. They had a little blurb on the news about that a while ago. Yeah, laugh at it when you get heavy snow. Sure will be fun for a day or two. Yep, well, you know, it's I got a text from a guy in Houston earlier today, and he had 3 inches of snow on the ground. He texted me about 30 minutes ago, and he said it all melted already. R.E. Thompson, hey, Bob, yes, people overestimate the size of bass. Yes, they do. And it makes guys like me look good if somebody catches a 2.5-pound bass and thinks it's 4. But the reality is, you need to know what it really is. When I catch a big one, I always let the other guy tell me what size he thinks it is. I always catch bigger fish that way. You know what? I think I believe that. There's Fred Bingaman checking in. Hello, Fred. Good to see you, buddy. I bet you guys are kind of frozen in there in St. Louis. I like the way you measure our fish when we fish. Then we know how much larger we can tell the story. There you go. I mean, that's kind of making sense. And up there where you are, here. Had a little champagne last night, so I'm staying off the alcohol today. Don't want to drink every night. I'm sure you wanted to know that. All right, kids, throw me a few questions. Let me look at this Pond Boss magazine. Hey, look at this. Pond Boss. $35 a year. Cheaper than a Friday night date, and it lasts a whole year. But you guys knew that. If you haven't subscribed to Pond Boss, please do. It helps pay the bills. You know, helps keep things rocking and rolling. Helps me be able to pay Leanne and cover the print bill and, you know, deal with all that stuff. How many square feet of bluegill spawning beds would you recommend for a 2-acre pond? I'll tell you what I would do there, Bill Shrum. I would recommend, here's the way I tell people. If you can have an area that's in 18 inches to 3 feet of water, and of course in your part of the country, you're in north central Oklahoma, if you, and your pond is going to fluctuate some, so if you can have spawning beds of 3/8 inch pea gravel in water 18 inches deep to a little over 3 feet deep, then that's what you need. It needs to be fairly flat areas, and those spawning beds need to be about as big around as the hood of a pickup truck. And for 2 acres, if you've got 6 of those, that's enough to grow plenty of bluegill. If you want to put in more, that's fine. You don't need more than 10. So 5 per acre is a little overkill. 2 to 3 per acre is more typical. And one of the hard parts is trying to put them in a spot where you know the bluegills are going to find them and use them. They'll find them. It's just, are they going to use them? And Kenny Sanderson just made a good point. Pea gravel is key. So I said 3/8 inch pea gravel. And I'll tell you why I say pea gravel. It's not unusual for somebody to say, hey, can I use crushed limestone? No. It's abrasive. When you pick up that crushed rock, it's like little razor blades. And when the bluegills especially start making their little crater beds, they're swimming around, sweeping that rock to build a crater, and that's going to be the substrate that they use to lay eggs. And when they're doing that, it took me a while to figure that out, because I had a couple of ponds years and years and years ago, 25 years ago, maybe longer, where the bluegills kept showing up with sores underneath them and sores on their fins where they'd been lacerated. And it took me a while to figure it out, but that's what was going on. That rock was sharp, and when they would sweep it, sometimes they'd get cut, and it was fairly common. But they don't ever get cut when they're using 3/8 inch pea gravel. Plus, with the roundness of that pea gravel, it's a whole lot easier for those fish to sweep the silt out when they get ready to use the bed again. Because once they build those beds, they don't have to build them again for a long, long time. And they don't mind, and they like to use the same beds over and over and over. If they get silted in, they can sweep it out. Bill got 3.5 tons of washed pea gravel. Attaboy. Here's a pretty good ad right there on the back of Pond Boss. Aquamax, fish food. Let me read some of these topics here. Oh, you know what? I got to tell you guys, this upcoming issue, usually when I do Ask the Boss, what I'll typically do is I get emails from people sending emails to info@pondboss.com, and they're asking questions. Well, this last issue, it was time for me to write Ask the Boss in the magazine, that column right there, and I didn't get a single question. That's the first time ever. So I thought, geez, I got to ask some questions. So I started digging around, and I started doing this more often. If I don't have enough questions, I start going back on these Tuesday night live shows and see if I can find some questions that I can publish. So I've done several of those. Matter of fact, I even did that in the November-December issue because it only had like 3 emails. So anyway, here's let me see here. Our lake went from 70 degrees to 59 degrees in a week. The fish have attacked the MVP food again. What's the trigger temperature for when fish stop feeding? Fish stop feeding when the water temperature starts dropping below 55 degrees. Channel catfish will eat until 55. Bluegill will start slowing down at 55 and pretty well shut down around 46 degrees. But in lakes where I'm trying to grow trophy bluegills, we don't cut the feed off all year. We cut the feed off. We cut the feed back because there still seems to be enough feed hogs that are the fastest growing bluegills in those ponds, and we feed them even if it's just a little bit, even if it's only for 2 seconds over winter, unless you're like John Funk and you got ice covering up the pond. I have been known to drill holes in ice when I do work up north and stuff some fish food down those holes. Pea gravel is the only material we recommend for the Texas hunter spawning beds. There you go. Take a look at that. Chris Blood's chiming in on it. You guys click on that link and you'll see exactly what he's talking about. Okay. Attaboy, Chris. Good job. Bill Shrum, I'm trying to get to 25% habitat this year in my 2-acre pond. If my calculations are correct, that's about 20,000 square feet of habitat. Do channels by an island and humps? Absolutely, yes, they do count as habitat. So habitat is, it doesn't have to be something that you put in a pond. It can be gravel beds. It can be cuts. It could be channels. It can be drop-offs. It can be the end of a point. You know, now a lot of these things by themselves are not so attractive as habitat, so you can enhance it. Like I'm working on one with Andy Benson right now on a really nice sized lake about an hour from here, and there's some areas where there's a well-defined creek channel, but the fish seem to be dispersed along it rather than congregated with it. So Andy's coming up with some ideas on how to place structure around that creek channel where the creek channel runs up along the shore of the lake, but then going out from the shore, the creek channel is about 30 feet wide, and at that point it's just bare in water about 8 to 10 feet deep. So Andy's thinking about adding a row of different kinds of mossback products to further well define that channel. So you can do some channels. Yes, so channels do count. But if you can enhance a channel, enhance the channel. If you enhance a channel with some kind of standing structure, rock piles, even cedar trees and concrete buckets, then what you're basically doing is you're defining that channel and giving more vertical space for fish to congregate. And when you enhance it like with cedar trees or mossback fish habitat or some of the Texas Hunter products, then you can attract bait fish and smaller fish, and it switches that channel from a travel corridor to more like an apartment complex. So there you go. That was worth the price of admission right there. John Dyer, I need to sink some elevated spawning beds with protective habitat underneath. What is the deepest depth to still be effective for spawning beds? You know, spawning beds can be effective up to probably 4 feet deep. I think my experience has been that we put spawning beds in water 6 feet deep, but bluegill, their tendency is to want to spawn more shallow than that. And if they have, strip mall, that's it. That's better than an apartment complex. Strip mall, place to shop along the creek bed. My experience has been that if you put much spawning beds in water deeper than about 5 feet, the bluegill tend to go up and use something you didn't put in. You know, so that's the way that really works. All right, Bill Schramm, great suggestion. I'll add the PVC pipe structures. Yep, there you go. Fake team. Hey, you know what? You ought to post pictures of that on here when we're finished, because that's pretty cool stuff. I worked with a guy that lived in West Virginia and built a lake just across the border in Ohio. And that guy did something I've never seen anybody do, and I'd never really thought about it. And this was probably, 2016, so 9 years ago. What he did was he would go to the Dollar General store, and when they had plastic stuff on sale, he'd buy it. He'd buy all of it. So he bought everything from plastic milk crates to plastic flowers. He even bought a bunch of swimming pool noodles. And he configured all that stuff into fish habitat. And the thing that struck me that I hadn't thought about was when he uses, so he'd take like these milk crates and with zip ties, and he would zip the plastic flowers to the milk crates. Then he'd stack them. So it'd be like this square crate tower, 5 feet tall, with all kinds of plastic flowers zip tied to it. And he might have 30 or 40 bucks in each one of them. Back then, back 9 or 10 years ago, whatever it was. But as I thought about it, I thought, what great substrate for paraphyton. and bacterial colonies to grow. And that actually helped his lake cleanse the water, because that lake was fairly muddy, and when he had that structure in it, the clarity improved some. And I'm convinced that plastic might not have played a significant role, but it played a role. Plus, it gave him all that substrate for bacterial colonies. He sent me some pictures of that with a GoPro camera, and you could see the bacterial colonies growing all over that plastic. And I know that it was covered up in insects and critters that feed on that. And that was a real smart habitat move. Hey, Palm Boss Magazine, $35 a year, cheaper than a Friday night date, and it lasts a year. Talk about Purina Mills. Purina Mills, I've worked with those guys as an ambassador. Started working with them in 1995, almost 30 years ago. And the thing that struck me then and continues to this day is their dedication to making good products. Now, Kenny Sanderson will be the first one to tell you that he can't get that fish food out there in western Kansas. So while they got a few hiccups in their distribution system, that doesn't take away from the quality of the fish food. My favorites are the Aquamax Sport Fish lineup, because I got to help develop that. And I know how well it works. I've used it for decades now. Well, they started really enhancing that stuff about 2005. So I've used it for 20 years now. And I've watched what it does. It grows some great fish. So I'm a big fan of Purina Mills' products. Not as big a fan of their distribution system. Snails love the plastic also. Okay, there you go, because they got food on there. Snails, if the snails are there, then red ear sunfish, that's what RES stands for, red ear sunfish. Texas Hunter products. Chris Blood's on here tonight. I'm not sure where he's hanging out. Last time I heard, he was in Costa Rica chasing big marlin. So Texas Hunter, one of the things I love about them is their products are American made, manufactured right there in San Antonio, Texas. But I can call those guys when I have somebody looking for a fish feeder. I can send them an email or call them. Fish feeder goes out that day as long as you call before 2 o'clock. And then that client's got it the next day. So the customer service is great. And I called Cody the other day, and my son Jonathan's feeder battery had gone out. Well, of course, he could run up to Tractor Supply and get one, but his fish hadn't been fed in a week, and he didn't know that the battery was out, and he was on a business trip. So I just sent Cody an email. Jonathan had a battery on his doorstep the next day. So their customer service is stellar. Speaking of Jonathan Lusk, you guys check out birddogit.com. If any of you are landowners and you've got several hundred acres and you run cattle or you're farming it, you need to send him an email. He's working on a project to where he can get rebates or tax credits based on your soil fertility, which I have no idea that exists. Fred Bingaman, that might be something you're interested in. I don't know. I don't know how. I know a bunch of yours is in CRP, which might not qualify, but I don't know. But go to birddogit.com, and the way that company started, Jonathan's brainstorm, which was about 3 years ago, he called me. He says, "Hey, Dad, listen. I'm in my early 40s. I'm raising kids. I don't have time for a deer lease. I don't want to book with an outfitter a year out and get to that point where I can't go that weekend." He said, "So if I want to go hunting, I got to have a friend. And if I don't have a friend or somebody I know that would let me go hunt, I can't take my kids. And my kids are getting to the age now where I'd really like to get them out in the woods and let them see what that's about." And he said, "What do you think about an idea of creating an app or a company that simulates VRBO or Airbnb for hunting, where I go find ranchers that want to sell a few hunts, maybe help pay a feed bill or something outside what the outfitters are doing, and then vet some hunters and put them together." I said, "Jonathan, that's a great idea." So he did that, and it's in its third year. And now, I don't know how many ranches he's got. He's got to be having close to 100 ranches. And if you want to hunt hogs from a helicopter, or if you want to do a father-daughter doe hunt for $1,200 or a mother-daughter doe hunt. You know, I mean, there's a wide variety of things. If you want to look at it, go to birddogit.com. And it's in its third year, and it's really escalating. And he's doing a good job, but he hustles it pretty hard, too. That guy's got a work ethic. I don't know where he got that, but he does. Easy Docks of Texas, David Schneiderman. Always want to do a shout-out for him. He's always been a big fan and an advertiser with Pond Boss. So if you're looking for a floating dock, check that out. So, hey, throw me some questions here, because I don't want to cut this thing off early, but if I run out of gas and things to talk about here in a minute, I will. So while I'm waiting on you guys to ask some more cool questions, Kenny asked me a question. Kenny and Scott Schillig said, "Stump me, dudes." Well, they give me a scientific name of a damn plant, starry stornwort or some stupid crap name. Scientific. Well, maybe it was, the name was scientific. And what do you do about it? Well, of course, they stumped me because that's what they wanted to do, and it's not that hard, really. I talk big, but you throw stuff like that at me, and I'm not going to get it. But you know what? It didn't dawn on me that day that stonewort is a common name for Cara, for a species of Cara. I missed that. I could have answered that question. Damn. That's my go-to. I don't do one of these every day, but almost every day. I got to put something in my body that's not any good for it. I don't know what the fake sugar is. What is it? Carbonated water, caramel color, phosphoric acid, aspartame. That's it. Sodium benzoate, a preservative. You know, Debbie won't eat any food with preservatives in it. And I don't understand that because she's pretty well preserved, and I think I am too. And I don't know about that. Let's talk about phototaxic. So you're going to make me look something up again. Phototaxic. Let's talk about phototoxic. Hey, bring me some questions, boys. Come on, let's go. Let me think about it. What kind of story can I tell you? I need to think of some stories. Oh, I got one. That didn't take long, did it? Like 6 seconds. There's a lot of guys that are fisheries biologists that are absolutely convinced that everything's about fish. And I was one of those guys. So, you know, for the first probably 15 or 18 years of my career, when I started talking to somebody about stocking a pond, it was about the fish. Okay, you got to do this for the fish, do that for the fish. You got to do this for the fish. And it was a little frustrating at times because I felt like people would go around me and ask somebody else. Well, you know, I didn't quite follow that, you know, because I was fighting hard to be the expert. Now I was probably in my late 20s to mid 30s when this was going on. It was a little frustrating because they would say things like, well, you know, I talked to so-and-so and they don't agree with that. Okay. So how do I rebut that? And it wasn't until I started getting a little bit of gray in my beard, here in my mustache, a little bit of gray, that people started listening to me. And what temperature do I cut the diffusers off? Okay, I'll hit that. I hear a siren. That doesn't happen here very often. So, anyway, what? I'll finish the story right quick, then I'll hit that topic on diffusers. The thing that started hitting me was I got to the point where my very first question was, what are your goals? And almost everybody I talk to this day, there may be 5 goals, and that's about it. Very rarely are there more than 5 goals, you know. And then when I started working on a project in upstate New York in 2004, that's when it really started to hit me. And I got invited to work on this project, and they were paying me pretty good. And I was feeling like I need to have some answers for these guys. So their original question was, in upstate New York, we can't raise bass. The biggest bass we can catch weigh about 6 3/4 pounds. How do we get bigger bass than that? So I got a group of biologists and fish hatchery people and professors together, and I said, okay, why can't bass grow to 8 pounds? They said, well, because the growing season is too short, the genetics aren't good enough, and there's not enough food. Bluegills spawn late, grow fast. They don't work up here. Bluegills are not good for bass up here. So then I started trying to get some answers, and then I'm talking to the property manager. So I'm starting to give him a few answers. He says, okay, well, how long will it take? And I said, well, we got to come up with some dadgum food for these fish. You know, I don't think the genetics are the issue, and I don't think the growing season is wrong. I think there's just not enough food. And he said, well, we're under pressure to get this program moving. So I said, okay, Buck, what's the problem? What is it? He said, well, that's why we hired you. And I said, well, okay. So I'm thinking about the fish. How do we get these fish to grow faster? And after spending several hours in electrofishing boats, they had good fish. They had some great fishing lakes that they developed over a span of 15 years. You know, 10 different species of predator fish, everything from yellow perch to black crappie to, you know, smallmouth bass, tiger muskies, northern pike, largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, crappie, white crappie, black crappie. I mean, there was at least 10 species of predator fish, and the food chain was short. So I'm thinking fishery stuff. So I said, okay, Buck, I'm struggling with this here. Let me ask you a question. I said, and President Bush had just, I guess he left office a few years before that. Is that right? No, 2004 he was still there. So I said, the Secret Service calls and President Bush is coming to go fishing tomorrow, be here at 9 o'clock. Is he going to catch any fish? He said, yeah. I said, okay, how's that going to happen? He said, well, we're going to get my boat, my tackle, and I'm going to take him out on the lodge pond, and we're going to go hit these 2 or 3 holes. And if he doesn't do very well, then we're going to load up. We're going to go out to the so-and-so pond in elk pasture, and he's going to catch fish there. If that doesn't work, I'm going to take him to the next one, and by noon, he will have caught a limit of something. So I said, oh, all right. Is that not happening now? He said, well, part of the reason the guy before you got fired is because the Prime Minister of Italy came fishing here after a meeting with Bob, the owner, and he caught one little 4-inch bluegill and made fun of it at dinner, and it embarrassed Bob. And he told us to go find somebody, and that's how we found you. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's it. That's the it. It's not about the fish. It's about the experience. It's about what do you do to set up the experience where people are successful. And that was a revelation for me. That was an epiphany. And from that point to this day, I see the fish as an ingredient, but I don't see them as the it. So when I'm interviewing a potential client, I'm asking the question so I can figure out what is their it. Like today when I was at that golf course, of course, there is no golf course. Right now, there's heavy equipment chopping through rock, storing topsoil over out of the way so they can come back and use it when they get the golf course shaped up and get the house pads built. So this lake is going to sit right in the middle of 2 neighborhoods in this subdivision that they're building with a big activity center sitting on the shores of this 9.3 acre lake. So the it there is for people to come out and be able to go around the lake and fish and enjoy the fishing and catch fish and be successful. So they want high catch rates. They want ease of accessibility. So because of that tells me that the lake can't be shaped like a kidney. It's got a shape you got to have a shape with way more shoreline. If it's shaped like a piece of a jigsaw puzzle, then the fishing is going to be way better because they're going to have a whole lot more shoreline and be able to access more of the lake if they're able to do that. So, and then if we can set up like 6 different zones where kids or adults can go out and have a legitimate chance at catching some fish from the shore, then they're going to be successful. So that's the it. So the point I'm trying to make you that I just took up about 11 minutes with is we got to figure out the it. And I think you need to do that too. All right, let's see here. Mike Cottrell told Walter at Windmill Grill and Saloon, y'all will be stopping in one day in St. Joe. Okay, yeah, next time I go up that way, we're going to go find him. Okay, so we got R.E. Thompson and Kenny Sanderson. Good topic. What temperature do I cut the diffusers off? Here's what I tell people. In the fall, as soon as the water temperature hits 55 degrees, turn them off. Because at that point, they've done their job. Now, the diffuser's job is to cleanse the water during the part of the growing season, at least from late spring until the fall. That's the job, is to move the water to allow it to contact the atmosphere so it can release gases and help expedite the breakdown of organic matter and nutrient loads and dead plankton, whatever it is. So when the temperature, water temperature hits 55 degrees, that's when I tell people to shut them off, because at that point, the water temperature is dropping. The majority of the aerobic activity is finished, and water's affinity for oxygen is going up. So the colder the water gets, the higher its affinity for oxygen is. Once water temperature hits about 39 degrees, that's where it's the densest, and that's where it can hold the most oxygen. So by about 55 degrees, you're about where you need to be with that. And then in the springtime, when the water temperature goes above 55 degrees, then go ahead and kick them back on. Now, one thing you got to be careful about is when you kick the diffusers on, if you miss that temperature window, you need to be checking the temperature to make sure you don't have a thermocline. If the water's already begun to stratify at that point, you got that warm layer sitting on top of a cold layer already in the spring, then you need to follow the startup instructions by the manufacturer. Let's see here. Hey, Joel, good to see you, buddy. John Harson, how many inches of pea gravel? Now, what I tell folks is if you're going to build these spawning beds, put some shade cloth down, or a plastic liner. Put something down there. Now, don't. I like shade cloth because it's porous, and gases can't build up underneath it where it whalebacks. If you've ever seen this, if you wanted to use a blue tarp that you can buy at Harbor Freight, chances are pretty good that it's going to whale back on you, because when you cover dirt underwater with something that's not porous, there's gases bubbling up, even if it's just air coming out of the dirt, and it will create like a little bubble, and when that bubble becomes buoyant, it's going to float up. So how many inches of pea gravel? If you'll put it on a piece of shade cloth, 3 to 4 inches is plenty. That's enough to where the fish can make the beds that they want. You don't need 6 inches at all. Put that in your next magazine so it's in print. R.E. Thompson, put what in the next magazine? The story I just told about the it? Is that what you're telling me? If you're telling me that, I got to make sure I haven't written that. I don't know if I have or not, but I'm going to take a note right now so I don't forget it. Let me do it. Y'all bear with me a minute. Editorial story. Write about the it. All right. See, you guys don't know that you have influence on me. Here we go. John Harson, lake's full. Wanting to put on ice. What do you want to? Yeah, okay, well, there you go. Okay, R.E. Thompson, you better subscribe to the magazine. Hey, Pond Boss, here it is right here. $35 a year. Cheaper than a Friday night date, and it lasts a year. And in the issue, I guess the upcoming issue will be, what did I just do? I just did January, February, so I'll be working on March, April next, which I'm starting on that tomorrow. That will be a feature story, the it. There you go. You just made my life easier, and you better be a subscriber. We was going to put gravel on the ice and let it fall on melt. John, if I was going to do that, I'm going to tell you something you probably can't do. And I'll tell you why. if you're going to do it that way, I'm not. Put the story about diffusers, okay? All right, I'm gonna do the it story anyway. Put the story about this. All right, story about diffusers. Okay, write about startup and shutdown of aeration system. There it is, right there in my notes. You guys, you're helping me with editorial content, Re. I just got 2 stories from you, and you didn't even know it. That's cool. Okay. John Harson. What I was going to tell you is, here's the hard part. If you can get your hands on some of those cheap plastic kids swimming pools and put those on the ice and fill them with gravel, then that would work, because the way that ice melts, and this is coming from a guy in Texas, boys. When the ice melts, it doesn't all melt at the same rate. Some melts from the top down, some melts from the bottom up, depending on the temperature and what's going on under the ice. And that means it doesn't melt evenly. So if you laid that gravel on top of some ice, and then ice breaks loose and some of it floats away, then your gravel's not going to end up where you want it. But if you were to put it in a kid's swimming pool, so the hard part is where are you going to find these plastic kids swimming pools this time of year in your part of the planet? You know, of course, maybe Amazon will bring you one and charge you too much freight, but there you go. So, hey, let me scroll back up and make sure I didn't miss something here. Yep, Bill Shrum's going to be sharing some pictures. Hey, the Bob Lusk Institute of Higher Pondology, I need to promote that a little bit. I've got the dates set. If you're interested in the Institute of Higher Pondology, we've got one in May and one in October, and scheduled to be at the West Haven Ranch. And Mark has been there. John Dyer has been there. Bill Shrum has been there. I don't know who else is here, but Jim Allen has been there. See what else we got. Hey, there's Trenton Evans. I just saw him. All right. I see. I didn't see that question. I'll tackle that one. But anyway, if you send an info@pondboss.com email, send me an email there. I'll get you the details on the upcoming Institute of Higher Pondology, because we've laid the groundwork, got a good curriculum, and plus, here's another highlight. I like to mold it to who's coming. So once I find out that you're coming, then I'm going to call you and we're going to talk about it, because I like to build the curriculum around what everybody needs, what everybody like to learn. So you get to come eat good food, hang out at a great place, hang out with me. We always have a mystery guest or two show up. Sometimes they're great, sometimes they're greater. Trenton Evans. Hi, Bob. What type of supplemental bait fish do you recommend for bass bluegill pond in southern Virginia? We have put in fathead minnows the past spring and fall to supplement the newly stocked bass, but I was wondering what other bait fish you recommend. I was thinking a threadfin shad, but they're going to die as soon as it gets cold. I'd like to have something on the table for the bass other than bluegill. Well, if you can get threadfin shad, that where you are in southern Virginia, that juice could be worth the squeeze if you can get threadfin shad that are on the cusp of spawning. What typically, I don't know how it happens around there, but in states like Louisiana and Texas and even Arkansas, a lot of the threadfin shad come from public lakes, where during the shad run, the shad hustlers go out and seine them up and then load them up and haul them and put them in your lake. Now, when you get over toward Alabama and Georgia, there's some fish farms that actually raise them. So you might talk to American Sport Fish Hatchery. They're very reputable, and I don't know how far it is from Montgomery, Alabama to where you are, but if it's not more than 8 or 10 hours, they could probably bring you some threadfin shad. I do think that's a good idea. I would also look at golden shiners. Now, keep in mind, golden shiners are fairly notorious as nest raiders. The thing is they really work well in ponds and lakes that fluctuate level some. So if your lake fluctuates some, that could be another good choice. And then once your bass get a little bigger, you can target feeding the bigger bass and you're in a good spot to do this, you can buy rainbow trout fingerlings 6 to 8 inches long for a fairly inexpensive cost. If you don't have native crawfish, find a source for native crawfish. That diversifies some as well. So, there's some, if you can get scuds, which you may be a little far south for that, I don't know. But check with David Beasley, fisheries biologist with Solitude. He knows the fish availability in that part of the country better than anybody I know. So check in with David Beasley at Solitude. You can go to the pondboss.com website, click on the resource guide, and you can find Dave Beasley there, or send me an email and I'll connect you with Dave. Let me scroll back up and make sure I didn't miss anything else. Okay, I think I've hit all these. Let's see what else we got here. A lot of misconceptions on aeration. Here, oops, I just scrolled past you guys here. Your explanation needs to be exposed more. Oh, okay. I get where, okay, all right. A lot of misconceptions. Okay, guys, I will write about aeration. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to dictate this to myself so I can know what I'm going to do and I'll forget it. I don't know what it is about getting up in years, which I haven't done yet. I don't turn 70 till March. Maybe that's the magic number. Okay, so I want to, let's see here. A lot of misconceptions. Okay, misconceptions of aeration, period. Talk about the different types of aeration and how to use those systems, period. Okay, guys, you just defined an article. So stand by. I'll write it. Today's what, Tuesday? I guess it is. I'm broadcasting. So I will write that probably over the weekend. I tell you what, if any of you guys are interested in a sneak peek of this article, especially R.E. Thompson and Kenny Sanderson and John Harrison and any other guys, if you want a sneak peek at this article, send me an email at info@pondboss.com and say, hey, send me a sneak peek. That'll help motivate me to get it done quicker. Plus, I'll bounce it off of you guys, and then I want you to tell me what you think about it. If you have any more questions, then what we'll do, here's what we'll do. I will send you the article that I write, and then when you see something where I need to expound, you question me and send that back to me. And I'm sincere when I say that. And then I will answer your question and quote you in the article. And then when you get your subscription, you'll have to call the office and buy 7 or 8 copies of that magazine to send all your friends so they can see you got quoted. Yeah, right. We usually send them for free. Okay, John Dyer, West Haven Ranch is a great venue, and the West family is fantastic. I mean, they're all in on this stuff. They got a 15-acre lake where we're studying the fish population twice a year, and it benefits them, but it also benefits us for an education. It's pretty darn cool. Ron Krisman, our smallmouth guru, I confused him with John Harrison a few weeks ago. I don't know, must have been drinking that night or something. I run my air in 1 to 2 feet of water in the winter near an edge so the pond can off-gas if there are big fish populations. Okay, let's talk about that. So what Ron's doing is he doesn't want his pond to freeze solid because he's got massive numbers of fish in there because he's going to sell them at market, at market prices, because he's growing smallmouth bass in a fish farming situation. So by having aeration in 1 to 2 feet of water allows the edge to not freeze solid and also be safe. And that way it can off gas, it can let go of some of the gases and not have the oxygen consumed so quickly like it would have if the pond were frozen over all the way. So that's a pretty smart technique, but you do that if you know what you're doing. Because if you put that diffuser out in deeper water and you're regurgitating that water up, opening a hole in the middle of the pond, then you're creating a whole new set of problems. Such as making your water way too cold for those fish. The smallmouth bass, they're cold water fish. No, they're not. They're cool water fish. They don't like water temperature 32.5 degrees. They like water 55 degrees. So they shiver. No, they don't. But they would if they could. Agreed, the West are great hosts. Trenton Evans is a subscriber. Okay, so any of you guys that want to participate in this aeration article, send me an email, info@pondboss.com. Say, hey, send me the aeration article. Hey, there's Tommy Welsh, our favorite tattoo artist from Kentucky, I believe, or Tennessee. Kentucky, I think. Another article about leaking ponds. That has been his number one issue. Never dig in an old farm pond to make the pond bigger because old farm ponds almost always leak. All right, Tommy. Dude, you guys are helping me write the next issue of the magazine, so I'm going to do this. Tommy Welsh wants me to write about leaky ponds. Use his as an example. All right, Tommy, you're going to get more famous than you already are. Bobby West makes excellent grilled bass, and you know what? And he fillets them right there. So, hey, guys, as always, it's huge fun hanging out with you guys. We've been rocking for an hour. You made it go by a lot faster. I appreciate you guys checking in and participating. Send me that email, and I will write these articles and get those back out there for you guys to read about and get you to ask some questions. So that's all for tonight. Until next Tuesday, I hope. Adios for now.